makes most women start a business? Is it passion, money, or freedom? Welcome to Female Founders, the podcast that takes you behind the scene with women who are founders and CEOs to help you start and scale a successful business of your own. I am your host, Nagelia de Ravin. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Female Founders. On today's episode, I am excited to have Dr. Natanya Wachtel, a former therapist, educator, and seasoned customer science-powered marketing strategist. She is the founder of New Solutions Network, a social-minded, cause-driven collective for companies committed to improving the world. Natanya is also the co-founder of Evermore.io, an AI-powered app platform for Jane's mental wellness. Good morning, Dr. Wachtel. It's a pleasure to have you here with me today. I'm excited to hear more about your work. But before we get started, can you tell us more about your journey from being a therapist to becoming a marketing strategist?
Sure. Well, I kind of did those things at the same time. But it was really just finding that way to balance everything that was going on in my personal life and in the world. And I had have a tendency to try and help as many people as I can, sometimes to the detriment of myself, something I'm still working to balance. And, I had wanted to work with folks that were really, really struggling. And, they needed so much more than a talk therapy session. And so that meant that I was trying to coordinate care or other kinds of resources. And it was taking a lot from my own family and life. And I also felt very limited in what I could achieve in that one-on-one situation. So what I noticed was when I partnered with larger organizations, and because I did have a business background and was working actually simultaneously in big pharma and other things like that on patient advocacy and clinician advocacy type roles, and marketing is a means to an end. So marketing is the way to get the funding for the programs that I felt passionate about that hopefully would serve people in a real way. And that's just how the world works, right? So you have to follow the money to get that traction so that everybody wins and gets a benefit. The businesses get the benefit that they're looking for while respecting their customers, especially in this case, which was people, right? Patients, clinicians, providers, allied health providers, and people in the system. So it was really just a way to kind of amplify what I had been trying to do in a one-on-one and small group setting to bring it to scale. And that also has a lot to do with leveraging technology.
So did you actually make that switch to say, hey, I'm going to just help therapists because you are, what you are doing at the time? Or were you like making the switch to help any type of businesses in general?
Yeah. So especially right now or in the last 10 years, we've really, we expanded. We don't just work in pharma and biotech where we were. We work with a lot of startups, very small scale companies, at angel round to Series A, just, some are getting out of Series A. We've also invested our own funds, my own funds in education, scholarships, and in some of these startups to help get them a little bit further along and use the network that I have and my team has to help give access for those who might not otherwise have those kinds of connections. And so that means that could be, your neighbor, your sister, your cousin, your brother, anybody who really is usually, less than connected, I will say. So usually, minority groups and stuff like that, where there's a real need for being a bridge between the access that I have and the access that they have to resources, and ultimately serving, children, adults, clinicians, everyone in between in the the wellness industry.
So with everything that you just said, so what inspired you to leave the corporate world to say, I'm going to make a difference in this world?
I've been trying to do it for a long time. I think, and I hope this comes across the right way, and I don't mean any disrespect to my upbringing or my parents, but immigrant culture is about the hustle a lot, right? So you work, you make your way.
Yes.
And the definition of success usually meant financial solvency, right? It means having that car or office or house or security that you can pay your bills, provide for your family. I wasn't doing what I cared about. So I knew how to make the money, but for what? So part of what I did was give it away to help others that I felt were more in need. But that was limited. I wasn't that fortunate and successful. So that's why I wound up partnering or starting nonprofits that could continue that giving as best as possible. And I had some health things and some personal loss in my immediate family. And when you have that, you kind of re-examine what you're doing, what your purpose is, and what can you do to affect positive change, because you feel gratitude in just waking up in the morning. And I feel like I had to go through that. I had a bit of a dark period where I was quite angry about my lot in life, that my body had failed me, that people had left me by dying, not that I wouldn't say that, but I think I internalized that and wasn't as cheerful as I genuinely am, to the point where some people were like, who are you? And then, I had to maybe get to that depth of feeling like there was no more and I wasn't going to exist, and worrying for my family and how they would survive, to kind of come back to, well, what can I do? And so there's only a few things we can control. And we were talking about this before we recorded, right? And we were laughing about, humor and injecting humor. Because I said, well, we can do that. I said, I'm actually having a terrible day. And so what can you do? You can control a bit how you think, which can affect how you behave and can affect what you create into this world. And that's pretty much all we can do. We can't go and undo the past. We can try and ask for forgiveness for our wrongs. We can try and learn from our mistakes, but we can only move forward, really. So why not move forward and look to the future and be open to imagining a different future than the one you might be seeing today? And so I was more structured conventionally in business up until COVID. Like most people, it threw my family for a loop. It affected us on many levels, from health reasons. I was still immune compromised, as well as my youngest were twins who were 5. We homeschooled. It was a lot on every level, but we, had a roof over our head, had food to eat. I'm not complaining. And we found ways to still help the community. I actually took up doing one-on-one therapy for clinicians and first responders during COVID, which kind of reminded me why I don't have a practice again, because it's emotionally, exhausting and eviscerating. But I wanted to feel like I was helping. And now I changed the business, though, model completely in COVID. So I basically had this time off because we were given time off. Every contract went on hold. Everything was like, you don't have work now. So you kind of re-examine, what are you doing and what are you doing it for? And I decided to shift away from working with a big company that has a budget, that has a clear defined need, and I know what that budget and the contracts are going to start. And we start with all the legal documentation, and then we kind of ideate and formulate it. And usually it's a January to December, that's your job or your team's jobs. Now we completely inverted that process, and we go with, who are you? Are you a person that's doing some good work, trying to better the world? And we have sort of focused on 3 domain areas of help, support. If you're in one of those 3 domains, which is access to food, access to care, and access to education, we'd love to see if we can do something together. That something might be an investment from us. It might be you hire us for commercialization because we know how to build brands and connect with customers because of the whole behavioral science and science. The marketing isn't necessarily making websites. It's understanding customer behavior. And that's what we do. We help bring brands and customers together in a way that honors that relationship. So it's not selling. It's connecting and partnering for like long-term growth, right? So do you need that? You want to help, reach certain fiscal goals? Do you need to understand a new market? Are you needing to retool something? That's a more contractual relationship, but they still start very differently. They start about what's the need, what's the ask, and who are the people involved. So then the work doesn't really feel like work. Do I still do presentations? Of course I do. Do I still run workshops? Of course I do, But when I go to a conference, I'm like smiling and dancing and having conversations, and most people don't even know what I do. I mean, I'm listening and I'm watching, even though I'm talking, about who's doing what and why. But usually it's a lot of matchmaking, a lot of finding problems to innovative problems to existing solutions, and helping sort of everyone come out with the outcome that they desired so that we all kind of benefit. And that feels pretty good. So then you want to do more. And sometimes it's a leap of faith because you don't always know the ROI at the start. And that's kind of the big difference, which is why I said, today wasn't the best day, but, going.
But also that brings us to everything you have been talking about. I'm thinking the fell under New Solutions Network, correct?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I do work with, like I said, nonprofits and support at different scale. Trying to work to do some scientific studies with the Chopra Foundation in terms of longevity. And longevity is like a very, like, live longer is like a big popular topic, but it's often reserved for solutions for the wealthy. In terms of fancy treatments and fancy supplements and all that. And we're looking at how can we get more education and awareness and acceptance in the mainstream, like in the treatment paradigms, as well as with the public, for things that don't really cost any money, like, breathing or how you think about something, or movement, whatever movement you can do, versus saying diet and exercise. Yes. And the one that does have a cost is food. But diet, and how diet is sort of one of the giant building blocks of health. And as you know, in this country, well, we mostly eat chemicals as the American diet. So, trying to help with that, but knowing and understanding and respecting that access to fresh food isn't something that everyone can just readily afford. And, trying to work to help with the food poverty as well in the process.
But now I know you have a few different companies. Let's focus a little bit more on New Solutions Network. So can you tell us about that company itself and everything that it does and the services that it provides itself?
Sure. I don't want to sound like a commercial because I'm not really sure that will serve your audience. But we do work with startups and early stage companies, as well as later stage companies that are looking to optimize, let's say, their commercialization. So whether that be, like I said, acquisition of new customers, positioning themselves in the marketplace, branding, brand identity, as well as, a lot of strategic partnerships. So leveraging these relationships with advocacy organizations, other, for-profit companies to help, basically make networks between and across these companies so that they can all essentially buoy one another.
Wow. And when did you start that company?
Well, New Solutions Network was called New Solutions Factory in 2008. And it's basically the same company. It's just we had smaller divisions that were operating somewhat independently. One was more focused on research and data and analytics and software tools to do a lot of insight mining on customers and that. Now we've brought all that under our roof. Health gaming, which is another big area, and education, and all kinds of adult learning, health literacy, that kind of thing. That was Health Ed Princeton. And we basically just kind of consolidated and scaled back a little bit in COVID so that we could focus on just the core benefits. And we do less on the execution side, if you will, and more on the strategic consultancy side. But we do, we do work. We roll up our sleeves and do work. There's no pontificating only. We're quite lean and mean, and we have a sliding scale to meet our clients where they are.
So you have a conference coming up, which is in May 24th, right?
Yeah, actually the date changed, so that's not on the website yet, but I do, the HEAL conference, the Health, Education, and Learning.
What is it about?
What is it about? It's about education and learning. No, it's about... Yes, and we're recording this, I know. It's a small, but I think quite powerful initiatives to kind of look at the latest trends in ed tech and med tech and some of that intersection, whether we're talking about med schools or regular schools in the US and global, and medical technology, whether they have an intersection with education or not, but all of it. And of course, the forefront of AI and all the new tools. So we're bringing together some of the leaders in those spaces to come and talk about what they're doing, how they're doing it, and how others can adopt these things, whether they be universities, hospitals, clinician practices, pharmaceutical companies, biotechs, wellness companies, startups, anyone in any of those spaces to have value. There's no vendor booths. It's not like that. It's more of an academic conference, but I'm there. So we're going to have some fun and we're going to eat a lot. And, it's going to now be at the end of July, but also still in Tampa, Florida. So you'll see that updated soon.
And anyone can attend it? Or does it have to be specific?
No, anyone who's interested can attend. We have student discounts. We have other discounts available that are need-based that you can inquire about. Full transparency, I'm not financially involved in this conference. I'm involved from an academic perspective, more about the agenda and the speakers. But obviously, I respect and admire the conference organizers, and I met them through a previous conference that was very well done and well run, where actually I met some colleagues who I'm working with today. So it just was a natural extension. I was sort of volunteering to help with a little bit that they asked me to take on that role.
Wow. I don't know where you find time to take all these roles.
That's another podcast for another day, but I don't sleep very much, although sleep is one of the other tenets I forgot to mention, sleep and hydration, that I'm trying to honor and look at in a new way. I think the old me used to wear a lack of sleep as some kind of badge of honor, like I worked through the night again. Now I'm like, no, I'm putting myself to bed here because I need this. I need a break. And trying to respect my body and what it needs a little better and teach others around me that that's okay too. And if you need a break, that's okay too. So there is some sleeping, not maybe as much as would be ideal, but that's kind of how I get
better than what it was.
And the other thing is really, truly, I'm so excited about what we're doing in every project. It doesn't really feel like work. Workshops are ideation sessions. Of course, there's preparation and coordination that's involved, but they're really collaborations. We don't really even say clients anymore. We say partners because they oftentimes come to us. We don't pitch. I've never pitched. I understand why that happens, but I think that's an awkward situation. The work product and the experience should speak for itself. So usually organic is the way to go, and you get a referral, and then you have to kind of show how you would handle what their challenges are. But there shouldn't be a question of, can you do it? That should happen before you even take the meeting. And that way, everyone's on the same page of mutual respect, respecting other people's work-life balances, asking for things that are reasonable. That doesn't mean that there's an emergency and we don't have fire drills or we don't, understand that happens. But it's a fundamentally different way of collaborating. And ultimately, I believe the work product is better. And the teams become truly like friends. And it's incredible. And you can't wait to work with them again, and you can't wait to connect them. And so if you have a connection with some incredible folks and maybe it's not the right fit at that time, so what? No harm, no foul. We say, well, maybe there's someone I know that can help you in this way, or someone or maybe there's not a fit because of legal reasons or financial reasons or stage reasons. That's fine. We're really just trying to say, who are you and what do you stand for? Do you want to make the world a better place? Great. We do too. What can we maybe do together? How do we think out of the box about what that might look like if it's not obvious?
Exactly. And sometimes too, I run to people, I don't really need the support at that moment. But 3-4 years later, I'm like, oh yeah, I know who can help with this. And you need that person. You never know. That's the reason why when I meet people, even if they would or mean to me sometimes or judge me by whatever reason they want to, I try to keep in mind that I might need that person one day. You never know. So I try just to be nice all the time because I might need you even if you're a mean person, but you never know when you need a mean person. Sometimes we do need them,
No, that's very big of you. And I think, another way that I look at it is understanding, like I was saying, and I'm not proud of this, that I was more harsh on myself and perhaps outwardly. And again, I don't mean like horrible raging, but, at times not my best self. And it was because of stuff within myself, not anyone that I spoke to or maybe wish I had spoken to in a different way or been more understanding of or what have you. So now I try and apply that lens to when you can just feel that they are seething, that they've got a lot going on, or they're masking something and saying, that's their issue. I think I'm not those things they say or treating me this way. I don't know why. Or people I care about. Maybe it's not me directly. And just sort of let that be their thing and then just move forward, move through it. And sometimes cut through that and even ask, depending on your relationship, are you okay? Is there something I can do for you? Or I feel like you're really upset about this. How can we get to a better place for you? That kind of thing. And you'll see sometimes instantly people and they are not even seeing it within themselves. And then, kind of pull back a bit and re-examine how they're approaching the situation.
I see your point. I deal with a lot of that. So now let's talk a bit about your podcast, Insights Out. What is it about?
Oh, okay. So this is an incredible opportunity that I was given from an amazing man called Saul Marquez, who also works at Medtronic, the device company, if you don't know what that is, for those out there. It's basically, I'm in a small group of healthcare focused podcasts. Mine specifically is called Insights Out, which was sort of a working title given to me by a young woman from the Ukraine who was living with us last year. And I'm like, oh, I love that. And it's because we talk about customer insights, right? Behavioral insights that have shaped how we do business, mostly in the healthcare world. So some of the guests I have are my friends, people that I respect and admire, people I've worked for or worked with in the past who have done things a little differently, not like with the playbook that was presented to them. And so we want to talk about some of those things and why and how they're doing those differently, and how leveraging and starting with customer insights, not your product attributes, is the ultimate way to success.
Yeah. So now, with the podcast, is this something you interview guests, or is it just you giving like in a more educated way?
Yeah, so we interview, and usually, I'll ask them 3 sort of softball questions that help illuminate the work that they're doing, and some of the maybe cases and things, how they've maneuvered certain kinds of challenges that I think will be applicable to the audience, that's the listening audience, which is, quite large.
It's like when I take the time, I was doing research about you. Every time I find one more thing, I find something a little bit more deeper. It's like I'm like,
well, I'm not that young. I just have I have big cheeks, so everyone thinks I'm younger than I am. No, I've been doing this a while, so multiple decades. And so you rack up the points, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how to sit still. And I've channeled that into activism and activity that hopefully has some purpose and benefit on the world, I hope.
I think it does. You wouldn't be doing it for over decades and decades and decades if you wasn't doing something good in the world.
Well, not decades and decades.
Okay, we'll go with 2. But I think it can be 1, 2, maybe 1.5. If you start at 16, probably right now about 21.
No, I mean, I've always done stuff, with young kids. From camp counselor to volunteering and that kind of stuff early on. All my early jobs were in that, in education. I was a teacher while I was in college, Also, my parents didn't just give me money, so I had to, earn money for my expenses. So those were the kinds of jobs you could get if you didn't really have any other skills. I also did typing, and I edited medical documents, which was really great for my medical terminology, and things like that. I just took jobs wherever I could, and, wasn't really allowed much television and that kind of stuff. So always just keeping busy. You can kind of, that's the only way I know how to live.
So now, what inspired you to co-found Evermore.io? What kind of impact do you hope to make in the mental health space with this platform?
Okay, this I'm really passionate about, and the credit goes to Ivy, the founder, and her inviting me into the fold here. I began as an advisor, full disclosure, in an investment capacity. And it was other people that I respect and admire in industry who were working with her. She and I had overlapped as well at work. And they were like, do you know what Ivy's doing? You should really talk to her, because I think she's doing something right up your alley. For whatever reason, we had fallen not out of touch, but the social algorithms hadn't kind of put everything in my face. So this was also during COVID, and we reconnected. I started as advisory, and I just basically kept asking her, do you have an intern program? Do you want help with this? Do you want help with that? And eventually she was like, do you want to just do this with me? And I was like, yeah, I think I do. So it's an incredible platform that, can use some love. So I'll put it out there. We definitely, are still looking for funding and support, and we're running pilots, but it's a uniquely designed platform that leverages what we're calling trademarked empathy AI. So not just any AI isn't, a singular database. So there's several reasons this is, I think, special. One is it's targeted at Gen Z, who use language and lexicon very differently than generations previous, especially Gen X, Boomer, and above, right? So the way they describe, there's a lot of self-deprecating language, the way they describe things. So if you're analyzing language as well as voice and timbre in the voice, you have to hone it into the way people's normal speech patterns are. And that's generationally shifts even within the US. Then you have cultures and all that kind of stuff layered on top. You have gender and non-binary, and you have a lot of people who have different kinds of ways of using language differently to express similar things. So we have that as part of the engine in the tech stack. We also have some game theory built in so that it feels like you're going towards something and you want to reignite and keep using the application, because a lot of these therapy apps rely on, the user, the patient, however you want to say, to basically come at their time of need, right? And this is more about bringing you through to that future possible you and that superhero within you than a spiral swirl of worry and lamenting your current problems. That doesn't mean you don't hash those out, but it's much more about possibility development and moving forward in the future and unlocking those inner core strengths that you may not even realize that you have.
One thing I realize with everything that you do, you still bring that therapy into it. Even the way you talk, by the way, you can still feel the therapy is into it when you are talking, which is a great thing because we need that. God knows.
Are you offering that? No, because we all need it. But I think the world is in pain across the globe. I was speaking with someone this morning. I'm doing a lot of work with folks in India, for example, and the way COVID decimated families there, I think many Americans can't really appreciate. And I have, some colleagues and contacts in South Africa that we're working with in places where there's not access to basic care, basic necessities of life, from clean water or food or, all kinds of stuff. I'm not going to get into it, and it really humbles you. And so you really just have to start with the primal stuff that you can and what makes us human, and how do we form connections, and how do we spread the care and the access around as best we can. Basically, not stealing from the rich, Robin Hood, but helping those who have get their excess that they're willing to share directly into people's hands who need it in the right way.
So
I'm
now
not
with
with shame or guilt along the way. This should be, nobody wants to be a charity case, and so there's also a delicate balance of how we do that.
And I think that's the best way to look at it as well. And I think that one thing I always tell people, even kids, like even would start with my son, I said that if you don't appreciate what you have now, there's a way for me to show you how to appreciate it. Let me drop you to another country where you can see how these kids are fighting just for a piece of bread for them to eat. So that's one of the things that even when it comes to food, I don't like throwing it away. Because when I'm throwing away, for me, I feel like I can feed a family with this. Why am I throwing it into the garbage?
I was just at a conference and I felt really guilty. I was eating and I had a stomach ache, and they were like, why don't you just thing. I was like, I still feel guilty. And I had a yogurt and it was in the container and I knew I couldn't put it back. And I felt kind of bad. I put it in my purse and I was like, maybe I'll eat this later. I also have that sort of issue with the guilt of wasting. So, and that was in front of business professionals who were sort of like, what are you doing? And, similarly to that, what you said about your son, I'm not going to say her name. Some people who know me know who this is, but, a person in our home living with us who is family. My daughters call her the big sister, but coming from war, coming from having phone calls with her parents where the lights go out and there's no power and there's siren noises, and really have a visible representation of, we have everything and some people have nothing. So let's be grateful. And what can we do about it to help a little bit? And I hear exactly what you're saying. And I think a lot of that starts in the home. And sometimes it's hard with words to convey that when they have iPads and bikes and whatever. But we can to kind of humble them enough to see this isn't everyone. And so that doesn't mean you should feel guilty about earning a living or having financial goals that take care of you or your family or whatever your needs are. I'm not judging that. I'm not perfect about that myself. I try and find that balance to pay it forward where it's possible.
For me, I looked at it, it's when I see other families the way they are, I use that as a way to actually want to push myself even a little bit harder. Because if I can make it push that point where I can help more, not just my family, but also I can go out and help more families, for me, I'm different in this world. So I look at it as a way that I can better myself so I can help other people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So now, how can someone reach out to you for your company? How can we are talking about New Solutions Network?
Yeah,
so how do they reach out to you?
Whatever anyone wants to reach out about, I'm open to it. I think LinkedIn is the best way to find me and reach me and communicate. Probably, yeah.
So I have one last question before I let you go. And you're probably going to ask me, why do I ask you that question? No, you're not going to say that. But what advice can you give to young women who are interested in the health tech or entrepreneurship?
Why are you asking me that? No, I'm just obviously this is something that I do often because I do mentor, lots of different women at different stages, and Women Who Create, one of the nonprofits that I'm on the board chair of, is essentially a mentor and scholarship program for young women of color, actually, or those who identify as female. So anyway, and it comes up a bit. And I'd say, don't be afraid to ask questions if you can. Like, look around you, and look around you might mean on the internet or your office or whatever situation you're at, a school, your job, whether it's an office job or not. Where are people that you admire, and what are they doing? And maybe get the courage to ask them if they could spend a little time with you, even just a few minutes, and talk to them about some of your challenges or your wants or how they got there. And most people will be happy to spend that time. And some will actually offer you more than you even anticipated. I find that one of the things, we did a survey with a lot of the mentees from Women Who Create to get a sense of, how our program worked for them or not. And some of the things that were not a shock, but kind of disheartening to see, was how many young women never had a mentor or thought they could get one or that they deserved one or what that meant. And I really feel like that's a sad gap we should fill. And the old generations of mine and above, need to do our part to help reach down across and, to make them feel welcome and that they can, to see themselves in senior positions or in certain kinds of dream jobs or whatever they may be, because nobody really gets there without some kind of help. And that can be from men, that can be from women, that can be from trans people, that can be from people who don't look like you or love like you or worship like you. And if you're in a place where that's supported, then those things are just labels, right? It's about, these are people trying to better themselves. And most people respond with, let me help you with that. And that might be a job. That might be an internship. That might be an assignment. That might just be some guidance. But either way, that might be a referral to someone else who might have something. So I would say just step one is to, sit up straight, get your power voice on, and reach out. Reach out to someone you don't know and say, hi, I read you were doing this, or I saw this interview with you and it really inspired me. I'd like to get into XYZ, but I don't have the education degree, or I don't have funding for that college, or whatever it may be. But this is why I'm interested. Can you give me any advice on what I could do, or what have you? And that's step one. And you may be surprised at how much you get back.
Yes, with that I agree. Sometimes we think that people will not help.
Yeah, I realized one other thing. Sorry, that, and that also, it's hard to really convey this because I don't know if I would have received it so well when I was like in my 20s or 30s. Whatever you decide isn't final. So whatever you're doing now or whatever you do next year, you still could do 50 new things. And I like to be the embodiment of that example. And so it's okay. Like, you're going to make mistakes and you're going to choose things and then decide you don't like them. Sorry. So that's another piece to kind of give that forgiveness and know that that's part of the process.
So now, if you've been helping in so many different ways, if there's one more thing you can do on earth before you leave this world, what will that be?
Convince my teenagers that eating vegetables is fun. No, I'm kidding.
Good luck with that.
Mom, I ate my vegetables, Mom. Come look at every meal. So, I don't know. That's a really tough question. That's why I deflected a little. I don't know. I don't have maybe a singular purpose except to just try and leave this world a little better than I found it, to try and move forward with kindness in my heart, to move forward owning my mistakes, any pains I've caused, and be as present as I can be and available for my family and friends and strangers and my own self. That is not really cool, but that's it, I guess.
Actually, it is. It is cool. It is cool. I thank you so much for giving me the chance to talk to you. You're an amazing woman doing a lot of great work out there. And I'm just grateful to be able to talk to you. Also, Nat, just talking to you, if someone is having a bad day, if you're not smiling, I don't know, something is wrong with you. You need to go see a therapist for real.
I often get that from podcast hosts, like, "Oh, you made my day," and I'm wondering, are they just saying that? I don't know. I'm not trying to do anything. I don't even know how else to be. I feel grateful that I'm here, so I want to be alive. Life is like a big party. And I want to be at the party, and I want to be dancing and having a good time and eating good food and mingling and meeting new people. And that's what life is, right? So you have some jobs to do to be there. You got to take care of yourself. You got to take some breaks from the dance floor. But at the end of the day, and be welcoming to those people who are standing in the corner and shy to talk to anyone, or clearly upset or crying or what have you. So that's how I look at it. And that's it. That's all I can do.
Well, next time I meet you, we're going to have that party, okay?
Absolutely.
Yes. Dancing it.
Thank you for listening to Female Founders Podcast. That's it for this week's episode. Be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast app or connect with us on womel.com so that you don't miss our next episode. See you next time. Bye for now.